Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Interludes with Charlottesville Opera. My name is Christina DiMaria. I'm the General Director at Charlottesville Opera. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For those of you who have not joined Interludes in the past, the intent of this program is to take advantage of this interlude in our sector, in our world, this moment in time, and use it to get to know the people in the Charlottesville Opera world who make everything possible, whether it be singers or musicians, as we will be joined by tonight, or community partners. There's so many people who make this organization come alive, and this is a good time to get to know them a little bit better. So that is our intention with our Interludes program, and I hope you will enjoy us for future ones as well. As I mentioned, tonight we will be joined by some members of the Charlottesville Opera Orchestra. They are indeed people who are often not seen because they are sitting in the pit, but they are absolutely integral to the experience that you have as audience members, and the music they produce is every bit as important as the singing on the stage. So we're so pleased to have them tonight. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. We are in a webinar environment, which means that you all do not see each other and you are all muted. That said, we very much want this to be interactive, so I encourage you to enter questions in the chat feature that's at the bottom of your screen. And we will field those questions as they come to the extent that we can. And we will also try to leave some time at the end to answer some of those questions. And anything that we don't get answered in this 45 minutes, we will absolutely follow up with the answers to your questions. I also hope that you had a moment to see some of the slides before you came on that not only told you a little bit about our musicians today, but also a couple of upcoming events that we have. We do have a live stream concert on October 25th. That is being hosted by our partners at the Front Porch. It will be at 8 p.m. that evening, featuring 4 singers. That will also be broadcast by another great community partner, WTJU, on Tuesday night, October 27th. And those details, that streaming can also be found at WTJU.net. And all of these details and ways to support Charlottesville Opera can be found at our website at charlottesvilleopera.org. So I encourage you to take a look at that and join us for those future events as well. And finally, before I have our musicians join us, I just want to give great thanks to our presenting sponsor, the Joseph and Robert Cornell Memorial Foundation, as well as the generous support of Mrs. Tessa Ader, who supports our singers and our orchestra members, and to all of you who I know many of you support in time, treasure, advocacy, enthusiasm. I know some of you on the webinar tonight are hosts for some of these musicians, and we are just so appreciative of the many ways that you support Charlottesville Opera. So with that, I'd like to ask my colleagues, the orchestral members, to join us, Mr. Dan Sender, Laura Stephenson and Troy Chang. Get on, and I will do a little brief introduction. Hello, there we go, there they all are. Laura Stephenson is the principal clarinet player for the Charlottesville Opera. She is also a principal clarinet player for the Iowa Symphony, Sarasota Orchestra. She's an active teacher. She's involved with youth orchestras, and she did her training at Juilliard, not too shabby. And also Mr. Troy Chang, our principal cello player. He is also principal cello with Sarasota. He plays with the Southwestern Florida Symphony, on faculty at the Florida Southern College, and plays at multiple festivals across the world. And then our own Dan Sender of Charlottesville, violinist, and he's the concertmaster for not only the Charlottesville Opera, but also the Charlottesville Symphony, the Virginia Consort. He is a professor at UVA. He plays with professional quartets all over the world, and he has recently been named a Fulbright Scholar, and we'll let him tell us a little bit more about that later in the program, but we'll be traveling later this spring as a Fulbright Scholar, which is, they're all so impressive. And I guess where I want to kick this off with all of you is, you didn't get to see each other and we didn't get to see you. And one of the wonderful things about the opera is it brings together musicians who are here and singers who are here, as well as musicians across the nation. And I'm curious maybe what you missed most about being here this summer.
I'll go, since Dan is there. Um, I really missed playing with different people. Now, if you are in and I love the Sarasota Orchestra and I love playing with them, but it's always really nice to sort of diversify and play with some new people. Although the Charlottesville Opera Orchestra does have several members of the Sarasota Orchestra in it. Your principal horn, Josh Horn. Yes, that is his last name. He is our principal horn, and Nick Arbellino plays in the opera orchestra. So there's several. I actually am an avid cyclist, and when I come to Charlottesville, I ride my bike all over the countryside in Free Union, and all in the back road. So I really missed that as well.
That's some hard riding around here.
Oh, but the drivers, I can't even believe how nice they are. They'll just sit behind you. It's really lovely. It's cyclist heaven.
That's great.
And I want to, I guess, echo Laura too, because of course I'm playing with Laura in Sarasota as well. And weirdly enough, I'm also into cycling. And yet Laura and I have, I think, yet to ride together because she really prefers those super early morning rides, and my personal schedule, shall we say, tends toward the later side, at least for my rides. I prefer to be in the sweltering sun than wake up at 5 a.m. for a ride like Laura likes to. But it's so flat down here in Florida that the rides, the hills, is really a love-hate relationship with those monstrous hills of Charlottesville. But I love it and miss it too.
Dan, what about you? You were here, but
yeah, I'm here, but it is an amazing difference. So what I look forward to is playing with talented peers. I have, obviously there's a performance faculty at UVA, but I have one violin colleague, and then the rest of them are students. And so they're talented folks, but it's not the same. So when these guys come from all over the East Coast and Midwest to our happy little town and make music, it's really special. I do look forward to it. I get to make music with talented grown-ups, and that's that's awesome.
That's so great. I mean, it does really seem like it has that festive, I keep calling it opera camp feel. But, can you comment on what the camaraderie between you all is like, and how that might be similar or different, because you are away from each other and then coming together. So how does that affect the experience, I guess, both musically and in personality or personal interactions?
Well, I'd like to say that you have on your panel today the social director, Mr. Troy Chang, of I think quite a few of the singers, but the entire orchestra. So after every single rehearsal, whatever conductor we may have, or Dan, we turn to Troy and we ask him where we're going, what we're doing, what's happening that day, and Troy tells us where to be, what time, what to bring. And so you actually have the whole social director of the festival, and we spend all our time together. When you're at a summer festival, you're away from home. It's very much a bubble that you're in, and so you go on hikes with people, you go cycling with people, you eat with them. It's very much like a camp, and Troy is the camp director.
All right.
It's an official title, I assure you. It's a funny story of how actually it started, because I am a big believer that to work together and to make amazing music together, the hang or the social aspect is actually such an important part, because it matters that you care about the people that you work with. And a number of years ago, Ed Paulson, who was our principal bass player, who was also an incredible person and sociable, decided at the end of the very first rehearsal to ask our conductor, Stephen Jarvie, when he was saying, "Oh, we're about to end, and any last questions?" and we're all raring to go, trying to pack up and trying to get out of there as soon as possible. Ed pops up and said, "Steve, sorry, one last question." We're all groaning inside. What is it now? Should we go to a whiskey jar or someplace else? And we all laughed, and we all, I think, actually went to Whiskey Jar on Main Street. And the following year, Ed wasn't there. So in his honor, I decided to echo Ed and say, "Steve, should we go to Whiskey Jar or Moss? And it's become a thing where, and Steve was telling me this too, when you end a rehearsal, you all want to have a bite to eat, maybe have a drink, and there's all these little groups that, oh, should we go here, should we go there? It makes so much more sense to say, this is where we're going, this is where we're all going to be. If you want to go home and you want to rest up, it's no problem, do that, but there's no worries. But this is where the hang is going to be, and it just, I don't know, I take an unusual, I suppose, amount of pride in trying to pick a variety of places so people don't get bored of different places. But I've been in Charlottesville since 2013, for the summers, I mean, and I absolutely love the town. And I have a checklist of restaurants and bars and breweries and wineries that I need to hit before
let's hear some of the, what are some of those places? I'm relatively new still too, so it's good for me to hear these great establishments.
Well, we only have 45 minutes, so I don't know how long you want to.
Okay, well, give me everybody's going to give me their top two. You too, Dan, because you should know them the most. All right, Dan, you started off. What's your top two?
I see. I should know them the most, but I learn about restaurants from the people who come and visit in the summer. So Troy telling me about a place. I think I found out about Lampo, the pizza place, from people in the opera orchestra. That's one of our favorites. And for a nice date night out, we go to Fleury on the Mall. For sure.
Nice, Laura.
I'm not a huge foodie. I actually love to go to the farmer's market and get all of just make my own amazing salad. And they have so many local farmers, and they have a lot of gluten-free stuff. I'm gluten-free, so I actually love that. And I think I went to C&O, and I loved it. The meal was amazing, and the ambiance, I felt like I was in a pirate ship some of the time. So I really, and Troy has introduced me to a couple other restaurants, and I really, the town you have there is really special, and you really can't go wrong.
Oh, not really. Some of my favorites have already been mentioned. Moss has the top, close to the top of the list with the Spanish tapas. Lampo, like Dan said, I can't get enough of. I'll go there by myself and sit at the bar and get a Mexican Coke and pizza. And I think the last one, downtown, there's a Cafe 88, which surprisingly makes really authentic Taiwanese food with this, matronly woman who makes unbelievable food, personally, one by one. So, and I'll stop myself there before I take up all 45 minutes talking about the food instead of the music.
There are a lot of delicious options here. I'm wondering, since all of you play in symphonies and you also played in the pit here, what is the difference? How does it, there's the obvious difference that you're not on stage, but how does that affect you all as players or your rapport with the audience? What does it feel like as a musician? How is it different?
I can take a first stab. A lot of it overlaps, right? So the skills you need are absolutely transfer from one to the other. But we chatted about this a little bit the other day, and since then I've been thinking about it. I think what strikes me is I have to be so much more aware in the pit, because every night is drastically different, because you're trying to coordinate with singers on the stage who may be having a good night, maybe having an off night. And so they're going to do their arias a little differently and stretch a note here or speed up there. So there's no sense at which you can just kind of sit back in your chair and play it just like you did last time, which isn't entirely true of symphony, but there's, I think, less variation night to night in a symphony run than there is in opera. So I think this like pathway from conductor to singer, and then back from singer to conductor to orchestra, in real time keeps your eyes like super big, and but it actually, that's what makes it so fun too. There's an adrenaline rush and like trying to keep up and make music in real time with everybody on stage. So I think that's what I'd say.
I would say I actually enjoy the pit because I'm not a huge, I don't need the spotlight, not overly fond of being the center of attention. And so, and the idea that you play differently on stage or off stage, for me, I don't. I put you feel what you feel for the music, and you play to the best of your ability all the time. You don't have like times when you sort of play well and, you know, because people can see you. The idea that you play now, what you're playing and how you interact with the people on stage and the conductor is different. But as for your personal contribution, I think it's, I actually really like being in the pit. I just feel like I'm part of the music even more, because it's not, I'm not, nobody's looking at me, you know?
Yeah.
I love playing both, and you know what Dan said is absolutely correct. There's a way that in symphonic work you can almost sit back in terms of the rhythm and the beat, and even though you're still paying attention to everything, you know what the rhythm is going to be to a certain extent. You can almost zone out is too strong of a word, but kind of just go. Whereas in opera or musicals, there's an added, of course, added element of the singers above. So you have to be nice and not just blast ahead with the rhythm if they're trying to take some time and whatnot. One thing I do enjoy about the pit is that because we're not in the spotlight, and I agree with Laura, we all are trying our best always. There is no, for me, there's no switch that goes, okay, I'm going to go to 60% now, and I'm going to go back up to 100 when it matters. I do like the pit because since we're not seen, I get to make funny faces at my colleagues, you know, during a performance. If something goes right or goes a little wrong, or maybe it was just a really beautiful moment, I can make a face, and it's not unprofessional because nobody can see us anyway. And Charlottesville has this, hopefully I'm not crossing a line here, in the Paramount has this quirk where the front row of people, and they know what Laura knows what I'm going to say now. The front row of people are very, very close, and there's just this velvet curtain that separates the front row of audience to us musicians. And Dan and I are both right next to the wall, you know, next to the conductor, and people don't realize how close they are. So we have a lot of, how shall we say, pictures of fronts of shoes that have poked.
Not only fronts of shoes, entire shoes, entire feet,
Well,
right in front of your face. Yeah.
People that wear sandals will see, you know, nail polish colors and all the
This
rest.
is a note to anybody listening. So if you get a front row seat, you
Get
better
a front row
pedicure, you better wear the right shoes. Okay.
Guys, we do a little tap of like, you know, excuse me, your foot's, you know, 6 inches from my face, and just. You know,
Well, there is a photo archive of those shoes. So if you do show up at a performance and your shoe does make an appearance, you may get your shoe recorded.
Oh my gosh. Any other stories from the pit? I mean, prying minds want to know, you know? What happens down there? I tried to get this out of Sharon for backstage, and she didn't share any dirt. There must be a code of silence, but.
We're busy getting ready, you know, we're not, nobody's painting our faces. I mean, lots of things have happened in the pits that I have played in. I remember, if you want one specific, this didn't happen at Charlottesville Opera, but this actually happened when I was at Juilliard, and between the pit and the audience, there's a big ditch because the stage moves up and down. And our principal flute player, who's now principal of the San Diego Symphony, and he was principal of Seattle Symphony, amazing player, Damari McGill, and his flute just fell right apart and went down into the hole and like banged around. And we were all like, and he was like, I mean, what do you do? Just, you can't keep playing because it doesn't work. But stuff happens all the time. Every performance, there's some little thing, you know. But we're used to it and we're prepared. So it's usually not catastrophic at all.
That's good. We all know how to rebound.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Troy.
No, I defer to you.
I was going to say opportunities for extracurricular activity down there in like in Puccini doesn't exist because you're literally glued to the page the whole time. but you can imagine in a show, say like Fiddler on the Roof, where you play for 5 minutes and then you sit there for say 7 or 8 minutes while you listen to like, talking up on stage. All kinds of things happen. And I don't want to, I don't want to give too many specifics.
Well, but
But
there are things that we can't talk
what they
about.
say about, yeah, but idle was something about idle hands. Yeah. At any rate, it is actually, it adds to the kind of fun and camaraderie, because we, in a sense, are filling that time in a way that makes us a tighter knit group in the end. And I think that's really special. So there's, this isn't too embarrassing, but in a long, say a 10-minute long passage up on stage where they're just chatting, it's not uncommon to see a book come out or a crossword puzzle. You quick try to do a couple and then it goes back down and you're ready to play again, especially toward the end of a run where you feel like you know that show inside and out. So we don't get into too much trouble, but there are opportunities in musicals especially.
Dan is famous for his crosswords during musicals, and hopefully I'm not throwing my colleagues under the bus, but during musicals, we do sometimes try to mess with each other in good-natured ways where, like Dan says, in a 10-minute interlude where they're talking on stage for the musical, we may or may not text each other as trying to make each other laugh during the silent parts to see who can find the most outrageous thing to elicit a chuckle. But it's all in good fun, and it does create a tremendous amount of camaraderie.
So I have everybody's cell phone number too now. So I'll be like, hey, what's going on down there? That's what's going on.
Shoe picks.
That's right.
That's right. Well, I'm curious I have a twofold question, and we talked a little bit about this when we met the other day, but we talked, the COVID impact, which I think everybody's interested in hearing, how you all are working through this time. But kind of related to that question is the idea of what people think what it's like to be a professional musician. Like we joked that you've gotten the questions many times, well, okay, but what's your real job? Or what do you do for your real job? And so I think like that's kind of a twofold question. I'd love to have you all address that, both things like what is it like to be, what is a day in your life like, and what that work is, and how that work is being currently affected, or how you're pivoting in this moment. Troy, you want to kick us off?
Start, since I think I'm the one with unluckily perhaps the craziest of the traveling, I suppose. But because for example, I have contracts with 2 or 3 different orchestras, plus summer festivals, and I teach at a college about 40 minutes away from me. It's always this piecemeal of trying to create a schedule for myself from a week-to-week basis, where at the beginning of the year, I might say, okay, do I want to play with this group on this week or this group on this week, based on the repertoire and where I am. I play in Sarasota, in Tampa, in Fort Myers. I teach in Lakeland. This is all in Florida. And in the summers, I'm in Arkansas and obviously Charlottesville. I'm on the road. I think I did the math. I drive about 35,000 miles a year until I did until March, at which point I think I've put 1,000 miles on my car since then. It's a very fulfilling life because I get to play so much amazing repertoire, and there's so few professions where you get to say that you actually perform the works of actual geniuses, and not to dull that word with hyperbole. But it does require a lot of self-sacrifice in that I don't spend a lot of time at home. I spend a lot of time driving to and from rehearsal. Just because I have a couple hours rehearsal here doesn't mean I still don't have to practice in preparation for that rehearsal. So I think Dan and Laura have a slightly toned down, hopefully, version of that life where they get to stay a little bit more in one place. But that's where I come from.
Dan, what about you? And maybe use this time to tell us just a little bit about your Fulbright too.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And in a way, I'm lucky to be associated with the university, like University of Virginia, where it provides me with a kind of a home base and a sense of stability. But a daily, a life in the day of Dan Sender is waking up really early because of my kids, whether I like it or not. But then I teach between 3 and 6 hours a day. And I practice and get ready for concerts. And then the rest of that time is, you know, trying to figure out a work-life balance, as everybody has to do. And that changes on the season of life. But right now I do try to, because my kids are young, I do try to bank as many hours as I can with them, realizing that that time is precious. But, you know, as a musician also, every hour you spend doing something else, you think, oh, you know, if I had practiced that a little bit more, like, oh, I could have, you know,
Oh my gosh,
I could
yeah.
have played that passage a little bit better if I had not thrown the football around with Gabriel and instead actually practice for another half an hour. It starts to really play tricks on you, but I try to believe that it's the right thing to do at this point in my life. So I do, yeah, a lot of teaching. Believe it or not, there's still some concerts going on creatively, not with the Charlottesville Symphony at the moment, but chamber music and solo things. So enough to keep me motivated to keep practicing. If I travel, unlike Troy, I'm traveling most like 2.5 hours, right? So I'll do Roanoke and Richmond Symphony, but nothing much beyond that. And then, yeah, really briefly, because you asked, and thank you for asking, I'm supposed to be in Hungary this fall. I was supposed to be in Hungary this fall, rather, and that was pushed to the spring. It's still depending on conditions, right? But I'll be teaching, there's a conservatory in Budapest called the Liszt Academy. I'll be teaching chamber music there and some violin lessons, and also at a university in a town called Pécs, which is a university that's partnered with UVA. Artistically, we've done some concerts back and forth. And the Cornell Foundation has been very supportive of that too. And so thank you to them. But I would say it's because of that connection and kind of ongoing research interest that I'm connected with Hungary. But the plan is to be there in January with the family. So we're all making the trip over and looking forward to a little change of pace.
And definitely your time spent with Gabriel is worth the unattainable perfection of whatever you didn't get practiced, right?
That's a good way to describe it. The perfection was unattainable anyway, so I might as well spend time with my kids, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Music is here to open our hearts, so once it's open, fill it with all the most important things, for sure. Laura?
Well, I just, my dad is a professor of mathematics, and I actually spent several years of my childhood going with, when he got sabbaticals to live in different countries. And, you know, I got taken out of school and I went to school in these other countries. And it was, I mean, amazing. It's such an amazing experience for the kids to be able to go to live in these other countries. And so it's so great that you get to do it, and that the kids are gonna, you know, I was pretty young when we went on the first one. I think I was in first grade, and I went to school in Hawaii. And so I think that your kids are really gonna remember it. As for a day in the life, Troy is correct that I do have more stability, kind of like Dan, where I have an orchestra that I'm a member of, and I have benefits. What I want to say is more about some of the other members of the orchestra. I'll take an example, Sam Petrie, who is a violinist and does, he plays the guitar when you guys need a guitar. He played Oklahoma, and I was his host was my host, and he didn't really know he was going to play it. Something happened, and he spent hours and hours practicing it. But someone like Sam, so when you have someone who is a pure freelancer, which is a lot of musicians, and they're very successful, so they make a good living doing this. Every single thing that they do is gone. Every single thing. Who would have ever thought that one day the career, and it's not just the career I worked for, it's literally like every single thing that you thought, you know, maybe you'll lose one job or one orchestra won't have it, or, you know, but the thought that you'll have zero income. And when you're a freelancer, you do not have health insurance. You don't have benefits. So my orchestra and Dan's, the university, we have healthcare, we have organizations looking after us. And when you freelance, you don't have any of that. So not only, and the idea that you can just go to get another job, you know, in an economy, I don't know, the idea that, you know, just get trained in something else, you know, it's really heartbreaking. So it's very difficult. And I'm so thankful that I am not in that position as of yet, but I don't know what's going to happen. Orchestras are surviving this year. Charlottesville Opera is surviving this year because of our patrons, because people love to have arts in their community. But there's only so long you cannot earn revenue, and you can, you know, there's an amount of time, and so you have to come back somehow. But I feel for those people who do not have what I have. So it's really apocalyptic for the arts, and the idea that, you know, the stock market's fine and the idea that people are fine in our communities, they are not fine at all. So
yeah. Well, and I just want to, you know, echo the thanks that you extended to the people who are keeping the symphony alive, the opera alive. You know, it's so, just, we can't express our gratitude enough, and they're doing it, I think, because they share our belief that it's so important to our community, and you have to keep supporting the individual artists and these entities so that our community stays rich. And it's really that cross-section of partners and musicians, and even the restaurants. Our board member Sherry Lewis wrote in, like, thanks for the shout out to the local restaurants, but it really all works together. I mean, what is an evening out to the opera if A, it isn't being, you know, supported and played by the finest musicians, and B, you don't get to go to a great dinner, whatever your choice for that is. It's the whole experience, and it's what, you know, your impressions, those of you who are coming in and those of us who live here, of why Charlottesville is special, is really based on this rich community that everybody plays a part in. So I'm hopeful that, you know, even though we have no idea how long we're gonna be in this situation, that our supporters realize that the proposition to have to rebuild everything is worse. And I think people are being, you know, creative as we can, and that's an interesting thing too. So, you know, I certainly hope that, you know, we've had generous people help us support you all, and we have every intention of continuing that. And, you know, I'm curious, you know, as we think about, I mean, I'm new here, so I'm going to be thinking about programming for not only this very interesting year ahead, but in the future. And I'd love to hear what your, either like what your favorite operas that you've played in with Charlottesville or even somewhere else, or what is the opera you would love for us to do?
Laura, why don't you start? Favorite opera, that's a big one.
You know, oh gosh. I mean, I have played most of the Puccini operas, and I cried during the performance of every single one of them at least once. And I'm down in the pit playing the clarinet. You cannot cry during the clarinet, but I mean, it's like, I mean, it overwhelms me. It overwhelms me, the beauty of the music, being inside it, being able to play it. It's just, it's kind of like, and I know Puccini is oh, I love, you know, it's very common for that to be a favorite opera composer. But you know what? It's because it's that good. I also love, I love playing Rigoletto. I've played it. I never get tired of Rigoletto. I love it. So that's one of my favorites when I see that come, and I think I played it in Charlottesville. What could, and the musicals, I even love that because there's a lot of hokey clarinet stuff sometimes. I love that.
I'm excited about the opera, but I'd love, you know, favorite musicals too. What should we be?
Oh, I would like to see a couple more current musicals. You know, we've played a lot of musicals that it's just, there's so much new stuff coming out. I don't know how much it costs to do some of that stuff. So, I mean, I'm just talking, you know, just, but I would like to see some more current, and someone like Sharon would be, you know, have her finger on the pulse of what can be possible with the musical. But they're certainly fun to play.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I like it, but.
Dan?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's a tough one to answer. I don't
well,
know
if you want.
I'll share. It's not one that we've done here, but I will share that when I was an undergrad student, I studied in Vienna for a little while and fell in love with opera there. I would go stand in line to get a standing room ticket to see the opera. It would cost all of like $3, right? And not really knowing, I just knew I wanted to go to the opera. The first one that I saw was Tristan and Isolde by Wagner. And it's like 4.5 hours, and I thought I was going to die. I was standing, you know, standing the whole time, and I thought I was going to die. And, but I was just mesmerized. I had never seen anything like that. And I went on to see the Ring Cycle there. I think my absolute favorite to witness in person is the Valkyrie. So I would say Wagner opera, even though I don't get to play Wagner and Mahler because the sizes are so big, and the forces necessary to do them are so large. It's just not possible where I am, but I love them. Yeah, Troy?
This is going to be akin to the restaurant list. I did do 7 years with the Sarasota Opera as well down here. And I remember one of the first things we played was Turandot. And like Laura, I mean, Puccini's stuff is just, it's unbelievable. And Tosca, while it's played all the time, is just, it's so good. And it's so, the story's so clear, the music is so good. For me, there's always been one that's fallen through the hole that I'm desperately trying to play, and for some reason, I've just never done it. I've played Così fan tutte like 4, 5, 6 times now, yet I've never done Don Giovanni. I'm dying
I would love to
play Don Giovanni, and for some reason, I always seem to just miss it, or it happens the year after, or something happens, and I don't get to play it. I've played a lot of Verdi, and because of the opera, and you know the Don Carlo, I think I did the 5-act version that was almost 5 hours long with the Grand Inquisitor scene. And like Dan says, I've only gotten to play The Flying Dutchman by Wagner. I've only ever sight read Siegfried, which was quite the experience when you're a master's student in New York and somebody tells you you're gonna sight read Siegfried for 3 hours. But I mean, I would love to play the Ring Cycle. Obviously, the size constraints or the cost is very prohibitive. In terms of musicals, there's one that I've done before when I was in high school that I know is difficult because of cost with dancers and other things, but I adore West Side Story. Would love to see it. I realize there's a lot that goes into it, but Bernstein's music is so good, or even Candide, but West Side Story was always an old favorite.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I love West Side Story too. So, you know, we're coming a little bit towards the end here, and I'm just curious, maybe tell us, you know, what's most, what do you think about most as an orchestra member, not just COVID, but outside of COVID, as you think about yourself in this industry and the challenge that lie ahead, you know, what's most on your mind? Obviously COVID's the most, but other things too.
What's most on my mind is that I think we're going to lose a lot of artists. If you can't make a living, you have to go do something else. And it's kind of like once you've been bitten by a dog, you kind of shy away from dogs. Like, are we ever going to feel safe as artists to continue doing this without a backup? Are music majors, are they going to have these stable jobs? Or I mean, it's kind of like whoever thought this could happen, and now that we've seen that it can happen, it's so scary. And a lot of orchestras, I don't know if they're going to survive in the same way. I don't know if people are going to come back into the halls in the same way. I don't know what musicians are going to be there. I know several people, and I'm considering it. I'm going to be honest, of changing careers, because already as a musician, you do not earn a lot. It's not like you can raise that $1 million to retire on. You know, the idea that this country is not supportive of programs that support will Medicare and Social Security be there when I retire? I don't know. The way things are going. So the idea that you continue on in a career that is really, I don't know what it's going to look like. And that's what's on my mind, because you're going to lose a lot of musicians, and the youth orchestras aren't going on. Like, I teach a lot, and there's no reason these kids are not going to school. Some band programs aren't even meeting. So you've got this couple years here where you're not going to have this class of musicians moving up. You know, normally there'll be 12 or 14 young clarinet players in 6th grade. They want to play an instrument. And I go to 2 high schools, and there were 2. You know, so from 6th grade to 12th grade, there's only going to be 2 clarinets moving, and maybe you'll lose one. So that means that, you know, and if you have a couple years like that, there's just going to be this kind of void, I think, just like these poor kids going to, you know, some kids are being left behind, and you can't, you know, there's just going to be these holes. And it just worries me. As you can see, I'm very anxious about the whole thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're describing the chain reaction really, really well, that not everybody even thinks of how deep it goes. Troy or Dan, do you have other things to add to that here? And I would encourage anybody in the audience who wants to type a question to do so here as well.
I mean, I know that I personally, back in March, when all of this began, and things starting to fall, I will unfortunately admit I had a fairly nihilistic viewpoint about our industry in terms of its future. You know, the goalpost kept on getting moved of, okay, we're going to lose a month or 2. Okay, we're going to lose the rest of the season. And I remember actually Charlottesville was the last thing that I had on my docket. I said, oh, that's going to be in July. Hopefully that won't be affected. And of course that fell too. And now we're solidly in the fall. We're talking about this season. We're talking about next summer and the next year. It's been a readjustment of trying to figure out, again, what this industry is going to look like Laura says. You know, gifts like Tessa Adler's to the orchestra was monumental. And I mean, yes, it was very helpful, but even more so, just in terms of mental health, of realizing that there are good people out there, that there are people that support the arts, that we will somehow make our way through this and come out the other end of the tunnel okay. It'll be slow, and I have to be really real with myself of how long this is going to take. You know, at what point are people going to be willing to sit next to each other, hip to hip, for a 3-hour performance of a show? On our side, in terms of orchestras, of how we, you know, make an orchestra, how do we get positioned when we have these auditions? I know a lot of people aren't perhaps familiar with how auditions work, and I don't know if we have time for that now. But for people to fly across the country to come take an audition and play for a committee, you know, in a small enclosed room, there's so many questions that are up in the air that need to be answered, and yet we don't have good answers for. We're all kind of stuck in this limbo. I'm happy to say that I'm a little more optimistic than I was perhaps in April, when I thought the world was going to end. But it's to good people out there that we still are pressing forward and have hope for the future.
Yeah, and I think, Dan, I'll let you give the closing comment on that, but, you know, certainly the support that we received, I know before I came on that not only had Mrs. Ader given such generously to the orchestra, and the Prestons have been incredible supporters of the orchestra in many ways, but we had many donors who stepped up and enabled Charlottesville Opera to at least be able to pay some portion of the contracts that were made. And, just again, to those specific donors and all of the people on the phone who are listening and supporters, it's just so critical, because you can hear firsthand, how this has an industry effect that we will all feel as people who live here and people who consume the arts. So it has a big effect on everyone. But Dan, I want you to, give your thoughts too on that.
Yeah, no, I do share both Laura and Troy's sentiment. There's a little anxiety, not tremendous amount, but also I do recognize that if people want the arts to be there when it's convenient for them again, they have to extend a lifeline now, or it may not be. And so I think if people are willing to invest in a down year to sustain what is really valuable, I mean, what a gift. It seems small, but music, it's not a cure-all, right? It's not like you play a concert and everything is all right with the world, but it's a tremendously powerful tool. And it can serve as a healing tool. And it can bring a community together. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what comes out of the other side of this. I'm hopeful. And I think it's going to cause a lot of orchestras and a lot of institutions to evaluate their model and their plan. And I think that's maybe a good thing, right? So I think that we've all been aware of kind of a decline in audiences and like a stagnating concert format, in a sense that the classical music and high arts aren't for the people anymore, right? And I think some of that, yeah, let's go ahead and get back to the drawing board on some of that on the rebound of this. And so while I do share some of the anxiety of Laura, I think this is an opportunity to kind of reevaluate, retool, and come out of it with some fresh ideas, which I think was maybe long overdue. And it just happens that it took a catastrophe to actually get the conversation really started. But I am fearful for our colleagues who are freelancers, who are thinking about leaving the field, and about this kind of this drain in the artist pool that we're going to feel in the next couple of years. But I think we're going to keep chugging along for the most part, right? And if nothing else, I think musicians are very creative people and think very creatively. And so I think I'm trusting that we'll find a way. Yeah.
That's great. And I want to thank all of you for your creativity, for the sacrifices you make to be so fantastic at your craft, and for sharing that art with Charlottesville Opera. I certainly plan to see all of you in person this summer, no matter what the season looks like, and that will be due to the supporters that are in this webinar, and Mrs. Ader and the Cornell Foundation, so many others who make this all possible. So great thanks to all of them. And I appreciate your time and everyone's time who's been on this call, and look forward to more conversation in the future. So thank you all so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.